What if the very machines built to save the planet are also the ones threatening to unravel its fragile balance? What if every innovation in green technology carries hidden costs that nature quietly absorbs? And what if humanity's future depends not on inventing more machines, but on learning how to keep them from entangling with the systems they claim to protect? The story of the green machine is often told as a triumph. The narrative of humanity finally finding ways to align technology with environmental stewardship. Solar panels glinting in desert fields, wind turbines spinning gracefully over coastal waters, electric cars gliding through cities without exhaust, and vast reforestation projects aided by drones all project an image of progress. These machines, unlike the fossil fuel behemoths of the past, promise to work with the Earth rather than against it. They are marketed as the tools that will stabilize the climate, halt emissions, and preserve biodiversity. Yet behind this optimistic story lies a more complicated reality. When technology meets nature, the entanglement is never straightforward. Machines extract resources, alter landscapes, and introduce new dependencies. They offer solutions, yes, but they also weave themselves into ecological systems in ways that can be as disruptive as they are restorative. The paradox begins with resource extraction. Every solar panel, battery, and wind turbine depends on materials, lithium, cobalt, rare earth metals, that must be mined, processed, and transported. The transition to green energy is often framed as a clean shift, but the reality is that mining operations devastate local ecosystems, pollute rivers, and displace communities. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, cobalt mining has caused widespread environmental destruction and human rights abuses. Lithium extraction in South America's salt flats drains water supplies in fragile desert ecosystems. Rare earth mining in China leaves toxic lakes of chemical waste. These realities reveal that the green machine is not detached from nature. It entangles with it at the cost of scars on the landscape. The balance is shifted, and while emissions may drop, the ecological footprint remains heavy. Beyond resource extraction, the deployment of green machines reshapes ecosystems in complex ways. Vast wind farms, while producing renewable energy, disrupt bird migration and bat populations. Solar farms occupy huge tracts of land, displacing wildlife and competing with agriculture. Hydropower dams provide low-carbon electricity but fragment river ecosystems, block fish migrations, and flood entire valleys. Even reforestation projects, often aided by drones or machinery, sometimes create monocultures that reduce biodiversity rather than restore it. Each of these examples shows how technology, even when branded green, still inserts itself into the natural balance, altering relationships between species, water, land, and atmosphere. The green machine, in this sense, is not a neutral savior. It is a participant in the ecological drama, capable of both healing and harming. The entanglement extends to the human sphere as well. Green technologies do not exist in isolation from politics and economics. They are embedded in systems of power, inequality, and profit. Consider the global competition over clean energy supply chains. Nations that dominate solar manufacturing, battery production, and rare earth processing gain leverage in international politics. This has already sparked tensions between the United States, China, and Europe. Meanwhile, poorer nations often become resource providers, exporting minerals while bearing the ecological and social costs of extraction. The balance between technology and nature thus mirrors the imbalance between nations, raising questions of justice and equity. Who benefits from the green machine, and who pays the price? The economic promise of green technology also carries risks of overconfidence. Governments and corporations increasingly present technological solutions as substitutes for systemic change. Carbon capture facilities, for example, are promoted as ways to offset continued fossil fuel use rather than as complements to deep emissions reductions. The danger here is moral hazard, the belief that machines alone can save us, allowing societies to avoid the harder task of transforming consumption patterns, reducing waste, and rethinking growth. This reliance on green machines can entangle humanity in new dependencies, locking us into cycles of extraction, production, and waste disguised as sustainability. Nature's balance becomes further strained, while the illusion of control blinds us to deeper structural issues. Culturally, the narrative of the green machine reflects humanity's persistent desire for mastery over nature. Solar panels and wind turbines are not just tools, they are symbols of control, embodiments of the belief that we can engineer our way out of crisis. Yet nature is not a static system waiting to be optimized. It is dynamic, complex, and unpredictable. When machines intervene, they inevitably produce ripple effects that cannot be fully anticipated. For example, large-scale afforestation projects intended to absorb carbon can change local rainfall patterns, affecting agriculture and biodiversity. Artificial wetlands designed to filter water can inadvertently alter species composition. These unintended consequences remind us that machines cannot simply fix nature. They become entangled in its complexity, sometimes reinforcing balance, sometimes disrupting it. The psychological dimension is equally important. The story of the green machine offers comfort in the face of climate anxiety. It reassures us that progress is possible. The technology will save us from catastrophe. This narrative has power, mobilizing investment and innovation. Yet it also risks becoming a myth that obscures the limits of technology. If people believe that machines will handle the crisis, they may feel less urgency to change lifestyles, reduce consumption, or push for systemic reforms. The entanglement here is not only with nature, but with our imagination, shaping how we see the future and what actions we consider necessary. At the same time, it would be wrong to dismiss the promise of green machines entirely. They are essential tools in the fight against climate change. Renewable energy technologies have dramatically reduced the cost of electricity in many regions, cutting emissions and providing cleaner air. Electric vehicles are reducing urban pollution. Advances in battery storage make renewable energy more reliable. Smart grids optimize energy use, reducing waste. Precision agriculture technologies help farmers use less water and fertilizer, reducing environmental impacts. These successes show that the green machine, when carefully designed and deployed, can support rather than destabilize nature's balance. The challenge is ensuring that these technologies are embedded in systems of justice, humility, and ecological respect. To navigate the entanglement of technology and nature, humanity must adopt a new mindset. Instead of seeing machines as masters of the environment, we must see them as participants in a partnership. This requires rethinking design, governance, and deployment. Machines should be designed not only for efficiency, but also for ecological compatibility. Governance must include voices from vulnerable communities, ensuring that costs and benefits are shared fairly. Deployment must prioritize balance, integrating technology into ecosystems rather than imposing it upon them. In short, the green machine must learn to serve nature, not entangle it further. Examples of this approach already exist. Agroecological farming combines modern sensors and data analysis with traditional ecological knowledge, creating systems that enhance soil health while increasing yields. Floating solar panels placed on reservoirs reduce water evaporation while generating electricity, benefiting both humans and ecosystems. Microgrids powered by renewables provide energy to rural communities without massive infrastructure, reducing ecological disruption. These cases show that machines can be designed to complement nature's rhythms rather than dominate them. But scaling such models requires a cultural shift away from the myth of technological supremacy and toward a vision of partnership. The cracked balance between machines and nature also demands attention to equity. If green technologies are to succeed, they must be accessible to all, not just the wealthy. Otherwise, the entanglement will deepen inequalities, with privileged groups shielded by machines, while vulnerable communities bear the brunt of ecological disruption. Policies must ensure that renewable energy, clean water technologies, and sustainable infrastructure are distributed fairly. Without this commitment, the green machine risks becoming another instrument of division, undermining its potential to restore balance. The metaphor of entanglement highlights the reality that machines and nature are now inseparable. Every turbine, panel, and battery is woven into the fabric of ecosystems. The question is not whether machines will entangle with nature, but how. Will they strangle ecosystems with new demands, or will they support resilience and regeneration? The answer depends on the choices humanity makes now, in laboratories, boardrooms, legislatures, and communities. The balance of the planet hangs in that entanglement, fragile yet still within reach. The story of the Green Machine is therefore a cautionary tale as well as a call to imagination. It warns against blind faith in technology while inviting us to envision a future where machines are allies of nature rather than adversaries. It challenges us to recognize the hidden costs of our innovations while pursuing designs that respect ecological limits. And it reminds us that balance is not something we impose, it is something we join. In the entanglement of machines and nature, survival will depend on humility, justice, and the wisdom to recognize that every solution carries consequences. The Green Machine is already here. The question is whether it will entangle us in new crises or help weave a sustainable balance. The answer lies not in the machines themselves, but in the values and systems that guide them. Humanity has the opportunity to shape that guidance now, before the entanglement tightens beyond repair. If we can do so with foresight, we may yet find that the Green Machine becomes a partner in preserving the delicate balance of nature rather than another force tearing it apart. The entanglement of technology with nature's balance deepens when we look beyond the machines themselves and examine the systems in which they operate. Green technologies are not just hardware. They are embedded in global supply chains, political strategies, cultural narratives, and ecological cycles. When we analyze these deeper connections, it becomes clear that the Green Machine is both a symbol of hope and a source of risk. The story is not simply one of invention, but of integration. And integration is rarely smooth. Nature resists, adapts, and sometimes collapses under the pressure of technological intrusion. Humanity, meanwhile, wrestles with competing visions of progress, caught between the dream of salvation through machines and the fear of creating new chains of dependency. One of the most striking features of this entanglement is the way in which green technologies shift environmental pressures rather than eliminate them. For example, solar energy reduces carbon emissions, but manufacturing solar panels consumes significant amounts of water, energy, and raw materials. The problem of disposal looms as well. Millions of panels will reach the end of their lifespans in the coming decades, creating mountains of waste that contain toxic elements. Wind turbines, too, present disposal challenges. Their blades, made from composite materials, are notoriously difficult to recycle, often ending up in landfills. In this sense, the Green Machine does not free us from the cycle of consumption and waste, but entangles us in new versions of it, leaving nature to absorb the hidden costs. The energy transition also introduces new forms of geopolitical tension. Fossil fuels have long been sources of conflict, from oil wars in the Middle East to disputes over gas pipelines in Europe. Many hoped that renewable energy would reduce such conflicts by decentralizing power and diversifying supply. Instead, new resource dependencies are emerging. Lithium, cobalt, and nickel are concentrated in a few regions, making them strategic assets. Nations with abundant reserves gain influence, while those dependent on imports face vulnerability. China's dominance in rare earth processing, for instance, gives it leverage in trade disputes. These tensions show that the Green Machine does not exist in a vacuum. It becomes entangled with the balance of global power, raising the risk that competition over green resources could replicate the very dynamics of conflict that fossil fuels created. The ecological consequences of these new dependencies are severe. In Chile's Atacama Desert, lithium extraction consumes vast quantities of groundwater in one of the driest regions on Earth. This disrupts fragile ecosystems and undermines indigenous livelihoods. In Indonesia, nickel mining has destroyed forests and polluted rivers, devastating biodiversity. These examples illustrate the paradox of green technology. While it reduces carbon emissions on a global scale, it often produces localized ecological disasters. The machine entangles itself in ecosystems not only through its operation, but through the extraction required to sustain it. The balance of nature becomes skewed, and the supposed green solution creates new forms of destruction. The political economy of green technology adds another layer of complexity. Corporations often frame their innovations as solutions to the climate crisis, but profit motives drive their actions. Carbon capture and storage projects, for example, are sometimes designed not to reduce emissions, but to justify continued fossil fuel extraction. Oil companies invest in carbon capture to prolong their business models, branding themselves as part of the solution while continuing to expand drilling. This reveals a dangerous entanglement between green machines and old industries. Instead of disrupting unsustainable systems, technology becomes a tool to sustain them under a new guise. Nature is caught in the middle, bearing the burden of prolonged exploitation masked as progress. Public perception of the green machine also plays a crucial role. For many, renewable technologies are symbols of hope, inspiring confidence that humanity can avert catastrophe. This optimism mobilizes political will and financial investment, accelerating innovation. Yet optimism can also slide into complacency. If people believe that solar farms and wind turbines will solve climate change, they may underestimate the need for deeper systemic changes, reducing consumption, rethinking agriculture, transforming transportation, and addressing inequality. The entanglement here is psychological. Machines shape not only ecosystems but imaginations, offering comfort that may dull the urgency of more difficult choices. The balance between realism and optimism becomes delicate, and tipping too far toward myth risks lulling societies into false security. Culturally, the entanglement reflects humanity's relationship with control. Green technologies represent an attempt to engineer harmony, but they are still rooted in the belief that mastery over nature is possible. This worldview has deep historical roots, stretching back to the Industrial Revolution and even earlier, when humans began to see nature as a resource to be optimized. The green machine extends this logic, suggesting that if fossil fuel technologies destabilize the climate, new machines can stabilize it. Yet nature is not a spreadsheet to be balanced. Its feedback loops are non-linear, and its systems are interconnected in ways humans cannot fully anticipate. By inserting machines into these systems, we risk reinforcing the very paradigm that created the crisis, the illusion of control. The cultural clash becomes visible when different worldviews collide. In industrialized nations, the narrative of technological salvation dominates. In many indigenous communities, however, solutions emphasize balance, reciprocity, and restraint. These traditions remind us that the entanglement of machines and nature is not inevitable. It is a choice shaped by cultural values. Ignoring these perspectives risks repeating patterns of colonialism, where powerful nations impose their technological visions on vulnerable communities. If the green machine is to avoid deepening injustice, it must be guided by diverse voices, not just by those with the most wealth or the loudest platforms. The entanglement also creates new vulnerabilities. Renewable energy systems, though cleaner, are not invincible. Solar farms can be damaged by storms, wind turbines by ice, and power grids by cyber attacks. Climate change itself intensifies these risks, creating feedback loops where the very systems designed to mitigate impacts become exposed to them. For example, a prolonged drought can reduce hydropower output, forcing reliance on backup systems that may include fossil fuels. A severe storm can destroy offshore wind farms, disrupting energy supply. These vulnerabilities remind us that machines cannot fully escape nature's volatility. They remain bound to it, and their balance is always precarious. Despite these challenges, there are pathways for the green machine to align more closely with nature's balance. One approach is biomimicry, designing technologies inspired by natural processes. Engineers have developed wind turbines modeled after whale fins, increasing efficiency while reducing turbulence. Architects design buildings that mimic termite mounds, maintaining stable temperatures without excessive energy use. Such innovations show that machines can learn from nature rather than dominate it. Another approach is circular economy design, ensuring that green technologies are built for reuse, repair, and recycling. If solar panels and batteries are designed with end-of-life management in mind, the entanglement with waste can be minimized. These strategies demonstrate that technology can adapt its relationship with nature, but only if humility replaces hubris. Justice must also remain at the center of this balance. Policies can ensure that resource extraction for green technologies does not replicate the abuses of fossil fuel industries. International agreements can mandate fair labor practices, environmental protections, and community consent. Financial investments can prioritize projects that benefit vulnerable communities, rather than simply enrich corporations. If the green machine is to become a force for balance rather than disruption, it must serve people equitably. Otherwise, it will entangle us in deeper inequalities, undermining both ecological and social stability. At the heart of all this lies a fundamental question: what kind of progress do we want? If progress is defined narrowly as more machines, more energy, and more control, then the entanglement will continue to strain nature's balance. But if progress is redefined as resilience, reciprocity, and regeneration, then the green machine can be reshaped into a partner of ecosystems rather than their adversary. The choice is ours, but the window is narrowing. The longer humanity clings to illusions of mastery, the more cracks will appear in the ecological fabric that sustains life. The entanglement of technology and nature is therefore both a warning and an opportunity. It warns us that no machine is truly green if it deepens exploitation, inequality, and waste. It offers the opportunity to reimagine technology as a collaborator, designed with humility and guided by justice. The future of the green machine will depend not only on engineers and scientists, but on citizens, activists, policymakers, and communities willing to demand a new vision. The balance of the planet depends on this collective reimagining. Because technology alone cannot save us, it must be embedded in systems of wisdom, equity, and respect for the Earth. The machine is here. The question is whether we will allow it to entangle nature's balance beyond repair, or whether we will guide it into a partnership that restores the delicate harmony of life. The answer will determine not only the success of green technology, but the survival of our civilization in an age of climate crisis. The story of the green machine reaches its most urgent moment when we step fully into the consequences of entanglement. By now it is clear that technology cannot exist outside of nature. It shapes and is shaped by ecosystems, politics, and human behavior. Part 1 introduced the paradox of green technology as both savior and disruptor. Part 2 examined the systemic pressures that make this entanglement unavoidable. Part 3 must now confront the human decisions and responsibilities that will determine whether the green machine becomes a partner in preserving nature's balance or a force that accelerates collapse. And as this examination unfolds, it becomes clear that the question is not only technical but profoundly ethical. How do we guide technology when the stakes are nothing less than the future of life on Earth? One of the most significant challenges is the temptation of shortcuts. Green technology promises rapid gains, reducing emissions, cutting pollution, and providing energy independence. Politicians, under pressure from citizens alarmed by climate disasters, often latch onto these promises as solutions that can be delivered within election cycles. Corporations, motivated by profit, frame technologies as breakthroughs that absolve industries of deeper change. Yet shortcuts are dangerous. Carbon capture facilities that allow fossil fuel companies to keep drilling, large-scale monoculture tree plantations that damage biodiversity while earning carbon credits, and massive solar farms that displace communities all reveal the risks of seeking quick fixes without addressing systemic causes. The entanglement of technology and nature is tightened not by the machines themselves, but by the human tendency to mistake tools for transformations. Another pressing issue is dependency. As societies build infrastructure around green technologies, they create new forms of reliance. Cities powered by solar and wind require vast grids and storage systems. If these fail, entire regions may lose access to energy. Countries dependent on imported lithium or cobalt become vulnerable to global supply shocks. Farmers using precision agriculture systems tied to satellites and AI may lose resilience if those systems falter. Dependency is not inherently negative. Modern societies rely on many systems, but it becomes dangerous when it narrows options. The green machine, if not carefully managed, can entangle humanity in dependencies that weaken rather than strengthen resilience. Nature's balance is disrupted not only by ecological extraction, but by social fragility, as communities lose the capacity to adapt without machines. The justice dimension grows sharper here. Green technologies are often deployed unevenly, with wealthier nations reaping the benefits while poorer ones carry the burdens. A country may adopt electric vehicles while outsourcing the mining of cobalt to regions plagued by unsafe labor conditions and environmental degradation. Urban elites may live in energy-efficient smart homes while rural communities struggle without access to clean power. Even within nations, disparities emerge. Subsidies for solar panels may favor homeowners while excluding renters or low-income households. The entanglement of technology and nature is therefore inseparable from the entanglement of technology and inequality. If justice is not prioritized, the green machine becomes another instrument of imbalance, reinforcing hierarchies rather than healing them. The ecological stakes extend beyond immediate impacts. Green technologies, when scaled massively, alter landscapes in ways that change ecological rhythms. Offshore wind farms may disrupt marine ecosystems. Expansive biofuel crops compete with food production and erode soil. Large-scale hydropower projects reshape river systems, leading to biodiversity loss. These interventions may lower carbon emissions, but at the cost of ecosystems that provide critical services, water purification, pollination, flood control, that machines cannot replicate. The entanglement becomes a trap. In trying to stabilize climate, humanity destabilizes the very systems that make life possible. Unless ecological integrity is prioritized alongside emissions reductions, the balance of nature will be tipped into a spiral of unintended consequences. At the same time, there is immense potential for positive transformation. The green machine, when guided by wisdom and humility, can enhance rather than undermine balance. Community-owned renewable projects empower people while reducing emissions. Technologies designed with ecological compatibility in mind, such as floating solar farms that reduce water evaporation or agroecological tools that regenerate soils, show that machines can serve nature's cycles. Circular design principles ensure that materials are reused and recycled rather than wasted. These approaches demonstrate that entanglement does not have to be destructive. It can be regenerative, weaving machines into the fabric of ecosystems in supportive ways. The challenge lies in shifting mindsets from dominance to partnership, from extraction to reciprocity. This shift requires rethinking governance. Technology does not guide itself. It is steered by policies, institutions, and cultural priorities. Current governance systems often favor short-term gains and corporate interests, but a rebalanced approach would embed ecological limits and social equity into every decision. International agreements could regulate resource extraction for green technologies, ensuring that mining respects human rights and ecosystems. National policies could prioritize community ownership of renewable infrastructure, distributing benefits more fairly. Local governments could design projects that integrate biodiversity, cultural traditions, and resilience. Without governance that reflects justice and humility, the entanglement of technology and nature will remain skewed, pulling society deeper into imbalance. The psychological element must also be addressed. The narrative of the green machine as savior is powerful but dangerous. It offers comfort in an age of climate anxiety, assuring people that innovation will shield them from catastrophe. Yet comfort can breed complacency. If societies believe that machines alone will secure the future, they may fail to make the cultural and behavioral shifts that are equally necessary. Reducing consumption, rethinking growth, valuing sufficiency over endless expansion, these are changes machines cannot make for us. The entanglement is not only physical but mental. It is a question of how we imagine solutions. Do we see machines as replacements for discipline or as partners in a broader transformation? The answer will shape the trajectory of the climate struggle. The cultural perspective is equally vital. The dominance of industrial, technocratic worldviews often marginalizes indigenous knowledge systems that emphasize balance and reciprocity. Yet these perspectives may hold keys to guiding the green machine wisely. For example, indigenous practices of controlled burns in forests reduce wildfire risk while maintaining biodiversity. Traditional water management systems sustain agriculture without draining ecosystems. These approaches show that technology does not need to override culture. It can be integrated with long-standing traditions that respect ecological limits. Ignoring these perspectives risks perpetuating a colonial pattern where powerful actors impose solutions that deepen rather than resolve imbalance. Embracing cultural diversity, on the other hand, can enrich the green machine with wisdom that aligns it more closely with nature's balance. Economics remains a core battleground. The pursuit of profit often distorts the purpose of green technologies. Corporations promote carbon offsets as ways to balance emissions, but many offset projects fail to deliver real benefits. Carbon markets become tools for speculation rather than genuine reduction. Greenwashing allows companies to brand themselves as sustainable while continuing harmful practices. These dynamics reveal how the entanglement of technology and nature can be hijacked by economic interests, transforming the green machine into a marketing tool rather than a genuine force for balance. Overcoming this requires systemic reform, redefining value beyond profit, embedding ecological health into economic metrics, and holding corporations accountable for the true impacts of their technologies. The urgency of the climate crisis makes all of this even more complex. As heat waves intensify, floods devastate, and storms grow stronger, the pressure for immediate solutions grows. In desperation, governments and corporations may accelerate the deployment of green machines without fully considering their consequences. The entanglement tightens under pressure, and the risk of missteps increases. Yet this urgency also creates opportunities. Crises can drive innovation, cooperation, and bold policy shifts. The key is whether humanity uses urgency as an excuse for shortcuts or as a catalyst for systemic change. The green machine can either be weaponized for quick fixes or mobilized for long-term balance. The choice depends on the values guiding its deployment. And this brings us to the call to action. The entanglement of technology and nature's balance is not an abstract debate for scientists and policymakers alone. It is a question that affects everyone. Every decision about consumption, energy use, and political engagement contributes to the direction of this entanglement. As an individual, you have power. Support renewable energy projects in your community. Question products and companies that greenwash their practices. Demand that governments prioritize justice and ecological health in climate policies. Push for transparency in supply chains. Educate yourself and others about the hidden costs of green technologies, and most importantly, refuse to accept the myth that machines alone will save us. Balance requires not only innovation but also cultural transformation, humility, and justice. Crisis Lens is here to bring these realities into focus. The green machine is not inherently good or bad. It is a tool whose impact depends on how humanity chooses to guide it. Will it become a force of regeneration or of deeper disruption? That decision lies in the collective hands of societies, communities, and individuals like you. The climate crisis is the defining challenge of our era, and technology will play a central role. But it will not decide the future for us. We must decide how to use it. If you care about that future, if you believe in shaping a world where machines work with nature instead of against it, then join this conversation. Subscribe to Crisis Lens, share this video, and add your voice to the growing movement demanding accountability, justice, and wisdom. The entanglement is already here, but its direction is not yet fixed. Together, we can guide the green machine toward balance rather than collapse. The choice is ours, and the time is now.